Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Media Show on the Pod TV Network. I'm Nick Pallavito. I will be your moderator for today's show, at least part of it. And today we're going to look at social media versus traditional media. With that, we have a special guest we're going to bring on right now, Mark Thimmig. And Mark, can you tell us a little bit about your background in media? Give us our who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I've spent over a decade in the marketing and PR space. I've also was one of the founders of AutoNation, where we grew the company from 250 million to 20 billion in 3 years. And I've had a number of different companies that I've founded in the auto industry, in building services, and in education. But been focusing on marketing and public relations over the last decade in particular. I'm also building out a new oil and gas Bitcoin data center company, and pretty excited about that. So love to be on the show and see what I can do to be helpful.
Yeah. So tell me about what you're doing in terms of media and marketing. What's your emphasis in that department?
So we, my firm, Conservaco and the Ignite Agency, we specialize in particular in public relations now more than ever. We also build very high quality websites for people who want a US based builder of their website, English first language. and we then also have a number of contacts. We do video work. We've done hundreds of videos for companies that want to build a brand and want to do it in a short 2, 3, 4 minute video that's telling their story. So we have a lot of experience in graphics design as well, branding, pitch deck preparation, and so on. Social media we've worked on for a number of years. It has become now much more of a AI dominated field, which is fine. And I think there's some wonderful tools out there that are across the industry, new ones coming out all the time in that area.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, talk to me about this, social media versus traditional media. Are we seeing a movement toward social media and away from traditional media that's going on in the United States and around the world?
Yeah, I think what we are finding is that social media is becoming more effective in many cases in the area of marketing, along with public relations. And traditional media and some of the traditional advertising, of course, it's very expensive, and it does not leave long-term impressions. Social media can be seen over and over again. Social media is interactive, which is really important if you're building a brand, selling a product. You can present that product, and you can present the ability to purchase or subscribe to that product in real time while you have the interest of the person seeing what it is you're offering. Social media also does a great job with video, which is highly effective because people tend to like to watch video more than they do want to read anything extensive. And I think the fact that social media can be much more real time in many cases for whether it's be a news story or an advertisement of a brand or a new product announcement. It can be very real time, and it can be spread across multiple channels very easily. So you can do Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and other social media channels very easily, which gives you a much broader reach. TikTok, of course, is also very popular for marketing, selling, and introducing brands.
Yeah, now TikTok has run into a little bit of problems based on Congress and a law that basically says they have to divest themselves. ByteDance has to divest themselves. Where do you see that going? It's going in front of the Supreme Court. Are they really going to be able to shut down TikTok?
Well, what I've read and I understand is, first of all, interesting enough, is that the incoming president here is very favorable to TikTok because it's had such a really profound impact on his campaign, allowed him to reach a lot of young people. And so I've heard, that may also affect things. But what I also have read and understood is that even if TikTok were supposedly banned, it doesn't shut them down. It just will not allow them to do updates. So anybody who's got TikTok would still have TikTok for an extended period of time. So I think the story is yet to be written on the real future of where TikTok goes.
Yeah. Also, are we looking to a shorter time frame? In other words, the attention span of Americans and people in general watching media. It looks to me, the data I've been reading, the average YouTube person will spend 3 minutes, and the average person on Instagram, Reels, TikTok are like like 30 seconds or less. Are we seeing media moving to a very rapid fire, small, you've got to get your message out in like 15 seconds or less? Are we seeing that also, Mark?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. People do have a very short attention span. One of the things that we've always counseled people when advertising or communicating on social media, keep in mind that a substantial percentage of people who are seeing what it is you're presenting on social media are probably doing it without sound. And therefore, that really is important that you add subtitles so that people know what is being said or presented in that video. They'll be standing in line at Starbucks. They'll be in many places where they're just waiting. They've got a 30 seconds or a minute or two. They're flipping through things. So you need to make sure that you're adding text to what it is that you're also presenting. So because they'll probably not have sound on.
Okay. And what is your thought about podcasting and podcasters? Our show gets rebroadcast on a lot of podcaster websites around the world. And a lot of them are saying, hey, I want to start a podcast. I want to start a podcast. I want to make money on podcasts. But, isn't that just a very competitive industry? In other words, podcast and podcasting. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think podcasting is great. It is certainly outpacing traditional media when you look at the number of viewers that podcasting can attract. It's amazing relative to traditional media. There's also, the question is should a podcast be 5 minutes long, or should it be 45 minutes long, or an hour long, or in Joe Rogan's case, should it be 3 hours long? But I think podcasts becoming so popular, and the tools to create a podcast now are so ubiquitous that pretty much anybody can literally create a podcast. You can actually have an AI program. If you want to put out a podcast every day, you can have an AI program read. You can create your podcast in AI, have it read in a voice that you like, and actually have music integrated as well. So it's pretty easy to do that. But I think it's much more difficult to have a podcast that has interesting people who are, participating in that podcast, rather than just someone sharing thoughts about a subject or matter.
So there are 4 million podcasts in the world. And so it's hard to figure out how you're going to stand out. Joe Rogan was recently deposed as having the most popular podcast by Kylie Kelsey. And her hook is, I guess, well, she does a good podcast, but she's related to Travis Kelce, who's Taylor Swift's boyfriend. And so, I mean, she's got a lot of hooks.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, with those hooks, Mark, how important is public relations and celebrities in terms of doing your podcasting and your shows?
yeah, I think where we've been able to elevate people with public relations is really about dynamic storytelling. It's about being able to present your story, what it is you're offering. We like to keep it at about 600 words, which is what a PR Newswire release is. And we'll reach an audience of about 90 million or more, with over 160 publications spread throughout the United States with that. And then we'll follow up with strategically targeted media that are relevant to the subject that people are on. And so what's great about it is it sticks around. Once that release is out there, it's on Google. And if someone has a consistent PR message ongoing, so every month they're out promoting whatever material development is happening on their show or in their business, the chances, first of all, they're building a huge repository of information on Google. So anybody goes to Google at that point, they're going to see all these press releases, and they're going to get the benefit of media that has published that release. So it's the credibility of those media publishing that release that goes behind the story and is added value, because people say, oh, I saw that on Yahoo Finance, or I saw that on a Money Magazine site, and so on and so forth. So I think that's where public relations has huge staying power and real benefit, and enough words opportunity to tell a story concisely and make it interesting for people to catch on to.
Mm-hmm. What about some of these programs like PR Web? Do they work, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, we've looked at many of the different PR distribution systems over time, and PR Newswire is really sort of our go-to because it's the dominant, most effective, most proven, best reach that we have found. There are sites that do a good job. It's not the only one. We just happen to feel that we can deliver not only the best results, but we can deliver the best reporting information to our customers, because they're going to get in-depth reports. They're going to know every publication their release went out on. They're going to know what the distribution of those publications is. They're going to know how it was distributed and all of that information. And then it'll continue to provide that report for a full month from time to time, so they'll know exactly how their release performed over an entire month period. And we think that's very, very important for our clients.
Mm-hmm. And so what you do you help corporations basically expand their reach in social media using, is it PR Wire or what?
Yeah, we do. First of all, we work with businesses of all sizes. So we work with early startup businesses. We've had a wide variety of businesses that are in technology and medical. Even we have a new potential client coming on that is building out a new YouTube program for their audience. And so PR Newswire is, of course, a well-established brand in the newswire business, and that's why we think they're really effective, along with our own pitching. And we've got my director of public relations been in the media business and PR business for over 30 years. So we have an incredible level of media contacts that we can reach out to across virtually every industry that you can imagine. Having done this for over a decade, we've worked with virtually every type of business. And oftentimes, we're more effective for people that are trying to establish a more national footprint, as opposed to somebody who owns a a corner coffee shop and they're located in Missoula, Montana, for example. They're not interested in going, across the United States. However, the company that produces the coffee that they sell in their coffee shop may be interested in becoming a well-known brand across the United States. So that's when we worked with both.
Okay, so the thing is, if you put something on PR Newswire, that other media outlets will actually pick it up. Because years ago, I used to use PR Web, but I tried a lot of these things. I got no reports back, so I don't know if it worked or not. I just bought stuff because that's what you do in financial services. So what you're saying is you'll actually get a report back.
We get report. Yeah, we get a basically a same-day report. We get a 3-day report. We get a 5-day report. We get a mid-month report. We get a 30-day report. And in there, it's extensive amount of information, pickups, engagement, all kinds of information. Very easy for our clients to read and to follow. It's really nicely presented. There are a lot of other PR services we've tried them in the past. They just don't get the traction.
Right.
And so, it is more expensive to use PR Newswire, but we're all about getting our clients an effective reach and distribution and to be able to provide them with accountability. And I think that's where, a professional organization comes in, along with, one of the things that I think is really important is George Pappas, our director of PR, who's been at this 30 years. He's a brilliant writer, and he had been a reporter. So there's an art to writing an effective press release. And that is one of the reasons you use a PR service and not just go on AI and try to write a press release. It's a knowledge of what is going to be effective, how to tell that story, and do it in a way in which the engagement is going to be the highest level engagement.
Okay. So it sounds to me words are important in terms of when you're doing this type of PR. Will it be able to help podcasters, do you think, at all by engaging a PR service?
Absolutely, it can help podcasters because, as Rick just mentioned a few minutes ago, the massive number of podcasters that are out there. And I think it's important what has been said here as well, and Rick mentioned is, what's the angle, what's the hook? So I think the opportunity to put out a press release saying, hey, we've launched this podcast. These are the stories we're going to tell, or the people we're going to have, or whatever that hook is, to get that out to an audience of over 90 million people, through over 160 publications, is certainly going to give you an advantage over somebody who's just putting a podcast out on a podcast network. So no question, but repetition and consistency in PR is extremely important. You can't just put one release out and figure that's going to be the end of it, and you don't need to. You need to stick with it and be consistent in order to follow up and tell your story each month with a new release as to what is happening and why people should be tuning in and hearing you.
Okay. The reason I ask is the things I have my own personal interest on, not only the pension company I have, but there's 4 shows that I actually produce on this network that I think could use a PR boost, let's put it that way. One is on medicine and science by Dr. Michael Patmos. And every month, we do it every week, but every month, if we were able to put a PR, which we could, because some of his topics are very important, it may be able to create a boost, not just for his show, but for the whole network.
No question.
Think
that
would work?
I certainly think that would help. And obviously, you're already leveraging social media. So we work most effectively in combination with multiple sources of communication. So that's what I think is really, really the most helpful, is when you've got multiple things going on. But yes, it would certainly start to build your brand. But
what's your affordability?
our affordability, we charge roughly $6,000 a month, which is a complete turnkey solution. That includes the national PR release, which we buy, which is very expensive. It includes not only writing the release, publishing the release, following the release, pitching strategic media. We build a media list of 500 to 600 additional media people in the field of the specific client. So if it's medical, for example, as Nick just mentioned, we'll have a list of 500 related publications and media sources that we're going to pitch directly. And we pitch those by, direct outreach, as opposed to, we never spam media. That is not an effective tool. So we go out and we literally pitch those targeted media, and any media that say, Nick says, hey, I'd like to see if we could get featured in this publication or that, and we'll go pitch that. Now, the one other thing, Rick, I would mention is that, virtually every client says to us, oh, I want to be in USA Today, I want to be on the Wall Street Journal, I want to be in, New York Times or whatever. Bottom line is, when you start talking about tier one business publications and media publications, they're extremely hard. They've got 1,000 people pitching them every single day for a story. There are multiple layers of people that you have to go through, that a story has to get through to even get published in any of those type publications. And they can be very easily, the story could get a long way and get knocked out by the latest development in world politics, crime, any number of things that can all of a sudden take that story out and dominate the media's attention. So they also tend to, tier one media tends to also pick up from regional media or smaller media when a story is starting to grab hold. So it's generally picked up over time, not when you first put out. You're not going to get USA Today with your first release.
So I have two questions. One is, how does the shrinking of newspapers and magazines affect everything? Like the LA Times is now 30 pages long on most days. And okay, that's thing one. Thing two is, what about people who can't afford $6,000 a month?
Well, first of all, let me take your first comment and question. Most all of the media that we are reaching, first of all, is electronic media. So LA Times has an electronic on-site version. Every media source that we're trying to reach first and foremost is an online media or has an online media. So we're also reaching many TV and radio stations and so on across the country that have online websites for their news and publication. So that will not doesn't hurt us when there's limited, what I would call paper publications. There are fewer and fewer of those, and you're 100% right. More and more people want to look at everything online. They don't really want print editions very often. So we're going to be out there. In terms of people that are, trying to do something without first of all, our fees are drastically lower than what you would pay, sort of a tier one firm. You could be paying $30,000 to $50,000 or $100,000 a month with some of the top tier firms out there, and you're going to not be handled by the director of public relations. You're going to be handled by several other people. You can try to do this on your own, and you may get some results, but you're going to get whatever it is that you're capable of, which is probably not going to be consistent with what a firm of a decade of experience and thousands of media contacts and the skill and knowledge to do it. So that's the big difference. Hey, Mark.
Yeah, how you doing, Mark? Just really quickly, because even on the network is something that I run across, and it frustrates me sometimes. But what is your thoughts? And I think Rick kind of alluded to it because a lot of people would love to be able to get the New York Times or the Los Angeles papers or a number of other papers, even papers out of London. But a lot of them, as I know, Nick knows this as well, have those lovely thing called paywalls and all along those lines. So I just wanted your take on paywalls because they oftentimes will stop you from getting the news that you want and all along those lines because of the way that they are structured. So even here on this network, there are some stories that I can't get the full coverage of because of those fun paywalls that you have to dance around. And I do know that there are paywall services or service that will try to remove the paywalls, including one called Remove Paywall and everything. But I just wanted your take on paywalls and maybe even how to get around them.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think first of all, the paywalls are predominantly on what I would call, the higher level pay media. New York Times was a good example. There's others that have that. Generally, when we're putting out a story and it's going to 160 publications, if you're going to hit a paywall on one of them, we're going to have covered so many other media sources where that story is going to show up on Google that you're going to always see the story. So we never have been blocked out of the story in that regard. I think usually I've run across paywalls from time to time. I'm always able to find the story published by someone else who doesn't have a paywall. So I think that helps. In terms of people who want to reach, again, and get their story out, what we always talk about, one of the things that's very important is when we are writing these, we want to understand what is the innovation, what's the backstory. So in some cases, there's a really interesting innovation that someone has to present, and it could be the way they're approaching something. If it's a podcast, it could be kinds of people that are appearing on that show that are really interesting people. If there's a backstory that's interesting, media also likes backstories. Why are you doing this? What caused you to be interested in creating this business, this product, or what is the future? So it depends on what someone has for us to be able to work with to figure out what is going to be the most engaging story that is going to both engage the media but also engage readers.
What about crazy stunts? Like there's this woman, Laura Loomer, who's a conservative pundit who is known for being a nut. And she got kicked off of Twitter a few years ago. And so she went to Twitter's headquarters and took a bicycle chain and handcuffed her, locked herself to the door of Twitter. And she got a certain amount of coverage, and it wasn't good coverage. People think she's kind of a jerk. But what about doing, I've considered like doing crazy crap to see if I could get attention.
Well, there is this old comment, no press is bad press. I don't know that I completely agree with that. If you're building a brand, bad press can destroy the brand. But I think interesting, Rick, that obviously when you get sort of crazy stories at times, the media will cover those. Some media will cover those stories because they're what I call clickbait. And so if you can create a clickbait story, you can sometimes get broader coverage for that.
And Mark, just really quickly coming back to
direction, I feel like you need to come, if you're going to do something crazy, you need to write down 100 crazy things. You have to come up with 100 ideas and only then pick like the best one or two. If you go with your first idea, it's going to stink, right?
Could very well be. Like I say, the thing you got to be careful about is you can build a brand and destroy a brand very quickly. So, you got to be really careful about what you're doing if you're going to pull off something like that.
Do clients ever come to you with big problems? Like Matt Gaetz, for instance, say he came to you and said, this report just came out. I'm paying for prostitutes, doing drugs in Congress. Can you help me?
Yeah, I think what we would want to do is, first of all, we got to sit down. We got to understand the landscape of what exactly is the story that is being put out about that individual, and then we have to figure out how do we counter that story. Now, a great example of kind of what you're talking about, Rick, which is interesting, is what I call the Bud Light story.
Mhm.
I'm not sure who the PR agency that was advising Bud Light is, but I certainly would never hire them because I think they failed to grasp the magnitude of the situation they got themselves into and the manner in which to recover from that quickly, where there were various options and they didn't choose any effective option to get out of their crisis. Billions and billions of dollars in equity and damage their brand for an extended period of time. So
we should talk about the specifics of that. So Bud Light hired Dylan Mulvaney, who's a transgender woman, to advertise to LGBTQ beer drinkers. They used her in some ads targeted at gay people. But then I would guess that Libs of TikTok, which is a Twitter account that looks for liberal excess to point out, to piss off conservatives, got a hold of this very narrowly targeted campaign and said, take a look at this. And then it exploded across all media. Bud Light was like shooting at a little niche market, but it got exploded.
well, the other thing that happened that I agree with what you said. However, there was one other thing that happened, and that's the head of marketing, the woman who came into the organization, had a very public social media broadcast where she said that she wanted that the brand was fratty and she wanted to change the brand. And that, coupled with what you just said, those two things together were the dynamite that blew it up. It was because it suggested there was an intention to literally change the brand and go after different people than their core base. And when you put those two together, it was devastating. So that's
But Mark, along those same lines, apparently they partnered with UFC back in October, and now they've become the official beer of the UFC, which is the whole fight kind of system and everything, still in the spotlight from Modelo Especial. So it looks like they were, and there is a decent Hispanic population that watches those kind of fights as well as wrestling and boxing in general. But it looks like they might have tried to find a way to counter it, and so far it looks like this counter may actually be working because now it is the official beer of the UFC. So it sounds like they're trying to work at.
But this Modelo is now the top-selling beer in the U.S., having overtaken Bud Light, well, probably because of this. Well, look, we can also talk about Disney. Disney's been a very woke company. Disney has a lot of gay employees because gay people love Disney. Disney stands for unconditional love. If they can make money off of it, Florida went to war against Disney over wokeness, with DeSantis versus Disney in the past few years. Now there's a front page article on today's LA Times about Disney backing away from wokeness and removing a trans storyline from one of its shows for kids.
Yeah, well, there's some changes going on across the country, obviously with Trump coming in, and Trump being, very opposed to a lot of the things that are happening. He said he's going to shut down some of this transgender movement. He's going to take men out of women's sports. He's got a number of things, and I think some of the companies are reacting to what they're going to see the next 4 years, and that may also be part of their strategy. For older parents who loved Disney, they didn't really want to see Disney really inspiring their children to follow a transgender or a gay lifestyle as well. So that's affected Disney in addition to that. But, these are all great examples, Rick, that you bring up, and I love to hear what Kimberly. I see she's quietly, waiting there in her Santa hat. What Kimberly's thoughts are too, because she's got some interesting. But I love the point you raised, Rick. You've been really right on. Kimberly, what's on your mind?
But she's mute. You got to unmute.
Oh, you're on mute, Kimberly.
Sorry about that. So no, you hit the nail on the head about a lot of very important things that people don't think about. And one of them is the fact of consistency, right? If you're doing it monthly or weekly or daily, but do it consistently so that people become familiar and come and join. There's no one real answer, because I think this industry changes consistently. You have to consistently be on top of what the people are interested in. I'll never forget the time when we felt like we had a handle on the fact that, a 20-second ad is fine. But then I woke up to the fact the next morning that it was 10 seconds. So, because people change. And I think it's good to have somebody who keeps up with that if you don't have the time or the resources, that you work with people who are already successful. If you don't have the money, try to figure out a way of how does this monetize your company as you're getting it. Like, $6,000 just isn't feasible for some people who are really good and have something good going on. So how do they monetize to justify that kind of expense and investment? It's an investment at this point. So those are some things that go through my mind when I hear this, because a lot of people, they don't want to invest the money in things like that because they don't see where the monetization is going to come in, or they don't have the runway to do so, which is, Nick and I, we've got runway to work with exactly what we're spending right now. But to add on, $6,000 to this would not be our runway. We've done really well being able to give everyone a resource that they actually broadcast to Amazon and Roku for free. We're getting about 2.4 million views. So that's not bad, but it could be improved. And could we monetize? Yes. But our bandwidth is where we are right now. Neither one of us have the time to run at the speed to make this go anymore, but nor do we have, $6,000, $3,000, even $1,000 a month. But we do have a great platform that nobody else has. We can go live and VOD. We can do reruns. Everything's stackable. It's all programmable, mostly ran by one person or two and AI. And we do this to Amazon, Roku, and several other platforms. And not many small companies have figured this out, both the live and the VOD, and being able to program them like this. So we have a great platform. We lack the bandwidth and the finances to go for. What would you recommend for somebody in this realm? We just don't have.
Sure, Kimberly. I think, and we run into this, frequently. We get people reach out to us. Oh, I want to get PR, and unfortunately, their finances aren't there to do that. First of all, one of the things I want to mention, you touched on, I think is really important for people. If you have a company and you have social media channels, one of the mistakes I've seen a number of people make is they want to have a social media channel on everything. They want Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and so on. The problem that I see is they start out enthusiastically, they have all these social media channels, and then they stop posting. And the worst thing in the world you can have is a bunch of social media channels that you haven't posted on for 3 or 4 months. That's not you, but I'm saying for the audience here, if you're going to go into social media, don't try to go into every single social media channel that you can find it, that you can think of. Go into ones that you are going to post on regularly.
Right.
I think one of the most powerful ones for you and Nick, Kimberly, is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very effective channel for business related in particular, which I think your productions are more business related. And you can do little videos, vignettes, little snaps, and put those out on a podcast. Put that out on a LinkedIn post, which can then easily be a Facebook post or an Instagram post, so on, with a click, to a website or a landing platform that is going to allow people to sign up for your program. So that's where I think you're going to be the most effective, is drive people to somewhere where they can land on a platform, sign up, know a little bit more about you. People don't like to read a lot, so a little bit more video than reading. But I think I'm on LinkedIn frequently, and I don't know if you're publishing on LinkedIn, but I don't see your post there, and that's something you could post on all the time.
So Nick generally does that. We get a limited automated post, but from there, whenever our resources are freer, we all tend to send them out from one person posting, and then we just kind of blast it out from there. But we need more resources. But you hit the nail on the head. It's a matter of finding where your viewership is first, and then redirecting it. Getting subscriptions has been the most difficult, because even I get sick and tired of subscribing to everything. I do it now as a favor. Like today, I was contacted by someone in my family would you please do me a favor so I can, get so many points at work? Could you subscribe so I can get a bonus check? And nobody does this for me, but I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to get out there and do it. So now my subscribing and doing whatever is purely based on someone calling me and asking me for a favor. That's it. I don't want to do it. And I have so many apps on my phone, it dies in 5 minutes without being plugged in. And then I go in and I delete all the apps, and everything I need to work doesn't work anymore. And and then everybody goes, you need to add this app. You need to add. So now I stopped doing apps. One, because there's a lot of fraud going on and a lot of scamming going on. And I'm helping a family where one of their family members isn't mentally there capacity-wise anymore. And because of all of this online stuff, they've gotten a hold of all her bank account and wiped her money clean. But it's because she had the apps and everything. So now I'm getting rid of apps. One, because I think that they give too much information to the world, and I'm just putting links on my home page to go to the website, and then I just log in fresh every time I go in. I think the apps are dangerous. Too many apps is very unhealthy. Yes, Rick.
Oh, I just decided not to get Venmo. It wasn't letting me because my computer's so old that it wouldn't let me. And I'm like, really? Do I want to get Venmo? And like, nope. But how is AI changing the PR landscape? Can people?
Yes, very good question.
Like if you talk to Claude or Chat GPT, you can say, hey, give me a 250-word press release as if written by the world's best press release writer about this. And within 2 seconds, it'll spit out something that is pretty good.
Yeah, I think Kimberly and Rick, what you're saying, it's important to narrow what it is you have on your phone, on your computer. It is also extremely important not to be clicking on anything that you really don't know. There's so many scams, as you said. There's, your package is waiting, et cetera, et cetera. Too many to even mention here at this time. But I think, and that's getting, quite a bit more serious, and people are being affected by it. And that's also kind of why I like the PR piece as effective, because it's putting that story out there, and it's putting it out through publications that people have confidence in. So, if you're clicking a story from Fox News or from, CNN or Yahoo Finance, you're okay. And so that's another reason why I think we can be effective with that.
So
Hey, Mark, I'm glad you brought it to the end.
When people buy your service, are they buying your relationships with various publishers and where when you send them a release, they're like, well, I'm going to look at this because I trust Mark's stuff.
That's a great point, and that's part of what I'm saying. Is we have built relationships with media sources and reporters over a decade, so that when we reach out to them, we're not reaching out to them with junk or garbage. They know we're reaching out to them with a story that could be interesting to them. Now, the other thing is that there are fewer and fewer reporters in media today that manage stories directly. So also, one of the things we try to counsel people on, because there's a lot of people that say, well, gee, I want to do interviews or whatever. First thing we want to say is, look, when we put a release out, we control every single word in that release. So you can't say something that is going to screw you up here. When you get on a phone call with a reporter and you're not highly trained in how to give a reporter information, and I have one really simple rule for all my clients. It's super simple. I tell them, look, if you get into an interview and you can't remember anything else, remember this one piece of guidance. Say what you want to read and nothing else. Say what you want to read. And if you say something, if you go offline, you get into hypotheticals, all of that, you can destroy your business. So I always counsel people to say, look, when the release goes out, we've controlled the words. We've controlled the story. You get on a phone, you might lose control of the story. So, we don't, and there are fewer reporters that have time to do that. And they oftentimes just do it by email. They don't get on a phone call and so on. Please.
I destroyed my life with an offhand comment. So, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago, I was interviewed for a puff piece, a human interest piece by Fox News, because I have one of the highest IQs in America. And this reporter said, well, how do you have time to do anything? You spend so much time taking IQ tests. And I'm like, I don't spend much time taking IQ tests. And, I'm supposed to be a comedian. That's been my job. So she asked me the question again. And this time I said, well, I already answered that. But frankly, I spend more time looking at porn than I do taking IQ tests. And bam, I pissed her off about some other stuff. And she published a story that said, TV comedy writer is addicted to porn, which I didn't say it. And boom, within a few months, my job was gone. I haven't worked. I mean, it was a disaster.
It's something taken so out of context, I just.
What can happen when you're talking to, you make a joke or you just get off or they ask you a hypothetical, your point is extremely well taken, Rick. And that's why I tell people, let us get the release out. We've controlled everything. That's what we want to do. And if we need to update the story next month, we'll update it next month. We also don't believe that we should be putting a release out every single week. It should be put out once every 4 to 6 weeks, and then we do our pitching and all of that during that month. So, but yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Hey, Mark, just really quickly.
You can also help provide damage control when something like that happens. You can establish a backup plan and come back and say, that was totally taken out of context. Because I could just as easily off cuff say something to that extent as well, and not really mean everything I say, but just try to be funny. Right.
Yeah, but the problem is that becomes a clickbait story.
Right.
And you're fighting against a clickbait story with with trying to clear up a clickbait story, and it doesn't. It's
No.
not, it's really tough follow on. And I know
Very tough to follow everything. Now, what is your thoughts around, as a marketing and PR person, around digital advertising? Because I've seen a lot of people that have been very big on digital advertising, whether that is the kind of rotating advertising that you might see in stores, or even, as many people on this network know, I get around by bus, and there's the wraps that are on buses. Don't care whether you're in Los Angeles or whether you're in Durham, North Carolina. So I'm just wondering, what is your take on advertising that is that digital type that's on the highways and the buses of America?
Well, at one point, I did a New York Times Square digital ad, which was extremely effective. It's expensive as hell, but it was extremely effective. I think it depends. There are places where, if you're trying to advertise on a billboard or digitally, it depends on where you're doing it. One of the really great, when I was living in California, and I used to drive to Las Vegas from time to time, there was a guy selling beef jerky, and he had bought about 6 or 8 billboards down the highway, and he was incredibly successful. We did some work for him, and because he was really into UFOs, and really it created an interesting stop off the highway, and it was interesting. This little, I think it was about a 2,500 square foot store, was doing about $7 or $10 million a year in beef jerky and candy and all that. And that was really driven off those 7 or 8 billboards that were along the highway. So again, if there's a strategy, if there's a focus on how you're going about this, then it can work. But throwing up a billboard somewhere, probably not the best use of your money.
So in the 90s, I was able to get on Schlock TV a few times. Like Geraldo used to have a show 30 years ago that was like Jerry Springer, except not as big. And the idea was, does this still apply, that producers and reporters are out of ideas? They're constantly, because they have to pitch ideas to their bosses every day, and they run out of ideas. So if you come to a producer or reporter with an idea, like you could do a story on this, that they'll grab it.
It depends. First of all, it's harder and harder to get in touch directly with reporters. But to your point, Rick, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, when we start working with a client, we want to understand what is it what's the story here? Is it the innovation? Is it something that is just going to change people's lives and it's amazing and it's incredible? Or is it a backstory that brought this person to do something remarkable? What is the story, to your point exactly, that is going to attract that reporter, which is going to attract his publisher, and the various steps within the publication to get to that, the editors and so on. What's it going to take to get that out there? And that's a story that we're getting that's outside of what the press release distribution system will give us. So the press release distribution system is guaranteeing us roughly 90 million views, 160 publications. What we're talking about and you're talking about is that extra group of publications and media sources that we're pitching directly to, that we're going to get in addition to what the PR Newswire service is going to do for us. Now, and if it's somebody who's trying to do this without someone like us that has the connections, the expert, that's what they need to be focused on. And keeping it concise, 600 words is about the right. That's what a PR Newswire release is going to be. Some people, there's too much story. It gets lost, and so on. So concise and interesting, to your point, Rick, is really what we need, is what anybody needs to do.
So do people come to you? So let's say you're an aspiring actor or musician, or you're trying to sell a TV show or your screenplay. Do people like that come to you?
Yes, we have. We have we've done work with book publishers, people that were doing movies. We once had a client that we worked with that did a whole piece on JFK, the doctors of JFK. We've done all kinds of different media sources. We recently took on some clients for CES. Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. It's coming up here in a few days. So, with a company, we also work with companies that are international. So this particular one company is from India. They don't know the U.S. market. They don't know how to reach the people in the U.S. So we deal with international players as well from around the world who want to penetrate the U.S. market with a new brand, a new product, or something they're trying to pitch to our U.S. population. And oftentimes, our stories will also, depending on how innovative they are, we work with an animatronic dog for people that have dementia. Well, that story, when we published that story, it went global because dementia is a global kind of disease, and this animatronic dog was interesting across the world. So sometimes our stories, we say we're focused on U.S. predominantly. We get Canadian, but we will get global publication for certain stories depending on what that story is and how
you have any other like stories that succeeded beyond your wildest expectations?
We worked with a coffee producer, helped them on Start Engine, raise millions of dollars. We've done a lot of work with companies raising capital that are doing Reg CF, Reg A, Reg D, where they need to go out there and promote their product. We've helped companies in industrial products and so on raise millions of dollars over the years. Helping them get their story out there. So we work with many clients across, as I say, technology, medicine, consumer products, you name it, books, etc.
I worked for famous people, and famous people have like these boutique, high-powered PR firms. And I was very jealous of that whole structure, and I couldn't justify it or afford it for myself, but I was like, wow, if I had this publicist, I could probably get somewhere. How does your thing differ from the Hollywood powerful boutique agency that represents, say, all the late night talk show hosts?
Well, first of all, some of those agencies are very specialized. So they tend to be really good, but they're very narrow in terms of their focus. And there's a place for those agencies where they know everybody in, say, the TV and media business, and they're very capable of reaching those publications and media sources. So I think that there is a place for those. As you mentioned, they're extremely expensive. You could easily drop, 30,000, 100,000. You could drop a lot. Sorry, you could drop a lot of money on those types of media sources. And there's a lot of people that think that you can pay for media stories. We do not work with people who are trying to buy media stories. So I think Kimberly's got a thought there too.
Well, no, and I agree with you. I do. And what I like to do is say, please let us continue this conversation at the beginning of the year, New Year. Everyone, please have a safe and wonderful holiday. Try to relax, reset a little bit, get out there and watch some of these advertisements, what's going on in this industry, and get some new ideas and bring them back to Mark and ask him, because this has been a great experience and learning for us here on Pod TV. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. Take
Thanks.
care.
Thanks so much. Take care, guys.